There's three crises facing education at the moment. A crisis in recruitment and retention, a crisis in school funding, but also a crisis in child poverty. So we'd really like to see the government commit to removing the two-child benefit cap and lift 500,000 children out of poverty. We'd also like to see the rollout of universal free school meals. During the cost of living crisis, we've seen the profits of energy giants rise to £420 billion. There are economic choices that the Chancellor needs to make, and I'd implore her to tax those energy giants. But what I do know is Gillian Keegan is probably sat in the sunshine in a country club at the moment, and she completely abdicated in her duty by not publishing that report.
Daniel, welcome to PoliticsJOE. How would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Daniel Kebede, General Secretary of the National Education Union.
The Chancellor is set to respond to the recommendations of the independent peer review bodies this afternoon.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about those recommendations and why they were necessary?
So at the moment it's in the press that the recommendations are around 5.5% for teachers and NHS workers. This is a real necessary step. Over the last decade we've seen teacher pay be completely eroded. The average teacher now has about 25% less in real terms in their pockets now than they did in 2010. So a 5.5% pay award, whilst it isn't a complete correction, is a step in the right direction.
According to Rachel Reeves, the pay recommendations for teachers were sitting unaddressed on the desk of the previous Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan. Why do you think that was the case?
Well, I'm not sure why that was the case, but what I do know is Gillian Keegan is probably sat in the sunshine in a country club at the moment, and she completely abdicated in her duty by not publishing that report. If it's 5.5%, then will be probably a difficulty for the government to fund that. So what we are asking for is over £1 billion to come with that pay award so that schools don't have any impact on the education provision.
Let's talk about that 5.5%. That's a pay rise above inflation, and it's speculated to come amid cuts to other areas of public spending, including speculatively hospital building. Why would you implore the Labour government to spend on teachers' pay over perhaps other areas of investment?
Well, these are choices for the Chancellor to make. I represent the members of the NEU, teachers and support staff up and down the country. What I will say though is during the cost of living crisis, we've seen the profits of energy giants rise to £420 billion. There are economic choices that the Chancellor needs to make, and I'd implore her to tax those energy giants.
And what do you think would be the cost of failing to follow through with the recommendations of the independent peer review bodies?
I mean, that would be highly provocative. Education is on its knees at the moment. Teacher pay has been completely eroded. We're in the midst of a deep recruitment and retention crisis. We've got 1 million children being taught in class sizes of 31 or more at the moment. To intervene on the pay review body process, not implement 5.5%, if that is what it is, would lead to a direction of travel where industrial action would be the conclusion. And we really want to avoid that. And I'm sure this government do too. The cost of an NEU strike is £300 million a day. We are asking for £1 billion in funding to fund a 5.5% pay award.
How far do you think in accepting the recommendations go towards resolving the recruitment and retention issue in education?
Well, it will take a step, but the crisis in education will still exist. We will still have a recruitment and retention crisis, although this government have pledged to recruit 6,500 new teachers. And the broader issues around funding will still exist. At the moment, we spend about 3.9% of GDP on education. Bhutan spend in excess of 7%. Ethiopia, 4.9%. To get up to the 5% recommended spend on education, that would require a £20 billion uplift. Now, we're not expecting that all in one go, but we do want to work with government over the course of a parliament to ensure that happens.
In regards to education, what are the other things you would like to see delivered from the Labour government?
So there's three crises facing education at the moment. A crisis in recruitment and retention, a crisis in school funding, but also a crisis in child poverty. So we'd really like to see the government commit to removing the two-child benefit cap and lift 500,000 children out of poverty. We'd also like to see the rollout of universal free school meals. The priority is that we have a government that invests in our children, which will be a huge contrast to the Tory mess that we had before.
Daniel Kebede, thank you so much for speaking to us.